In this video, we're gonna talk about sprints in Jira. So we'll start with what are the sprints, what features does the Jira offer to allow us to plan sprints and work in them. I will show you some of the tips and less known features, and also what is the biggest and most often raised problems with the features that Jira offers when it comes to sprints, and also how to work around that. This video is part of our effort to deliver best possible training around Jira, Confluence and whole Atlassian ecosystem. If you would like to support our work, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and remember that you can always reach out to us for one of our paid services like trainings, consultations, or implementation. Before we start discussing all the features, let's briefly tell what is the sprint. So basically, sprint is a set period of time, so it is set to be time boxed because it always is of the same duration, usually 2 weeks. And teams are committing to deliver certain scope of work in this period of time. So they basically say which tasks from the backlog they will pick up into the sprint. Then they have this set period of time to deliver this work. Everything that is delivered is ready, and things that they were not able to deliver get back to backlog, and another sprint is planned. So basically the process repeats. What is great about the sprints is that it is a relatively short period of time and planning happens after each of these periods. So there is a lot of times when we are able to change direction, to adapt to changing environment. Basically every 2 weeks or however long the sprint lasts, we are doing the planning so we can decide what is the most important in a given period of time. So if we're done with that, let's jump into Jira. Features that facilitate team to work in sprints are available in Jira software, and they are mostly around so-called boards. So if you create your Jira project or you have your Jira project, you can create a new board over here. So if I click that, you will see that I can create one of the two, either Scrum board or Kanban board. I will create Scrum board for now. And yeah, I will create it from existing project. So basically all the tasks from the project in which I am creating this or for which I will create this will be pulled into my board. Okay, so I will name it, hit create, and in the moment board will be created. Here it is. So on the left side, you can see that I am on the board that I created. At the moment, I am in the backlog. So the backlog is the place where most of the planning, if not all the planning, will be done. Also interesting for us will be active sprints. This is used for day-to-day work. So we'll get there, but we'll just cover that very briefly. Okay, what we have in our backlog screen. So obviously, as the name suggests, over here we have a backlog. So all the issues, all the Jira tickets that are currently identified that exist and are in scope of my board. So you've seen that for in my case, it was all the issues from given Jira project. And of course, we can create new issues over here. But what is more important, we can create a new sprint. So I will hit this, and you see that I have my sprint created. Name over here was predefined. I could actually change that by editing it. I could change duration and start date. I will leave it as it is for now. I created sprint right away, but before we are actually able to do the sprint planning, some work on backlog needs to be performed, and that is estimation and prioritization. Over here, you can see that in my backlog, each item has several information displayed. So basically a summary, what part of which epic given issue is, issue key, priority and story points. So I have some of the tasks estimated. Usually estimation is done by the team. You can look up, for example, techniques like planning poker, which is pretty popular to determine what is the size of the task. So for us to do the planning, we need to know how much work we're picking up to a sprint, right? We cannot just put there everything, because obviously we won't be able to deliver everything within 2 weeks, for which I said sprint. So for this, we have the story point estimate. After several sprints, we will see, or we will be able to tell pretty precisely how many story points we are able to deliver per sprint. At the beginning, it might be a bit of a guessing game, so you will just have to think about, look at the issues and think for yourself what you can deliver. It will take you a bit more time, might be a bit less precise, but for a start, it's good. Okay, so we have story points estimated, at least for part of the tasks. What else has to be done within the backlog? So usually product owner, person responsible for defining, identifying and prioritizing tasks to be delivered or work to be delivered, should also prioritize the backlog. And this is done pretty easily. Of course, we could look at the priority value over here, but usually whatever product owner wants to be delivered first should be just dragged at the top of the backlog, right? So we will see that issues that we want to be delivered now will be at the top. And then a team, when planning the sprint, when committing to the work, they will know that they should pick up tasks from the top of the backlog. And yeah, basically with that kind of simple reordering, we are able to convey quite a lot of information about what should be done first and what can wait. After work is identified over here and estimated, team can start pulling work into the sprint. So this can be done pretty easily, so they can just drag and drop tasks from the backlog to the sprint. But there is also a nice way you can see over here that if I hover between the backlog and sprint, there is a dashed line that appears. I can just drag it and drag it down, and you will see that all the tasks that are above this line will be pulled into the sprint when I drop the line. So I will do that, and 2 tasks that were above popped up into the sprint. Okay, so at the moment I have 11 story points in a sprint. I could do more. So another task that is in my backlog is estimated for 13 story points. That's a bit much. Normally we shouldn't put that large tasks in our sprint, because that many story points usually says that this task is not yet properly defined. We do not know everything that should be done. Here we just know that this is large. This task should be split into several smaller ones, and yeah, basically each of them should have smaller estimates. So what could we do? We could create new task. That would just be part of the one that I just selected, and put 5 story points on this. Then click on this task. You will see that on the right, the details will open, and here I could also edit story point value. By the way, if you will be going through and discussing tasks, if you will be estimating them using, for example, planning poker, this is pretty nice way to do this. You still see the backlog, but you are able to get into the details of a task and do estimation over here. But not what I was talking about. How to split this task? Where there is a context menu, if you right click on this, and you will see that one of the options over here is split issue. This will provide us with pretty simple menu. I will just do this like that, although it shouldn't really be done like that. The tasks should be described to really represent what they do, but just for the purpose of this video. So I will say that this is 5, this is 3, and I will add another one also as a 3. You can see that this does not sum up to 13 that I had earlier. Well, as I said, 13 basically means that the task is too big. We do not know exactly what should be done to deliver it. And here, after we splitted it, it turns out that it's a bit smaller. The sum of splitted task is not exactly the same as the story points of the one that we were splitting. So let's do that. Let's split the task. Yep, it is over here. And again, I will drag this one to pull two remaining tasks over here. Yeah, so we have 90 story points. Let's assume that for us, this is the proper value, around 20. As I mentioned at the beginning, you may have to kind of feel it. After some time, you will see how the value of story points that are being delivered within the sprint changes. And based on that, you will be able to pretty exactly say what is the amount of story points that you are able to deliver within your time box sprint. When planning is done, we can just click over here to start sprint. Yep, again, we will be prompted to confirm the start and end date and the duration. Maybe I'll just switch it to 2 weeks. Yeah, so now I just have to provide start date and the end date is calculated automatically. So let's hit start. And you see that I was automatically moved into the active sprint screen. So this is the screen that will be used in day-to-day work. So there's not really, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to daily work on this. This screen doesn't provide us a lot of information about the sprint. But over here we have pretty standard Kanban board. We can edit what columns we see here. So what the Jira statuses are mapped to what columns. We could do this over here in board settings. I won't be showing you this, but just remember that it is there. And we see which issues are in which column. So by that, in which status. We can obviously drag and drop them, change their statuses from here, but basically this is very convenient and easy way to monitor what is happening within the sprint, especially that we could also, and this is something I will show you from the board settings, we could create swim lanes over here. So I will create swim lanes based on, I could use epics or queries. Which one will be better? So queries is nice because it gives us a lot of flexibility. For example, we could provide query saying where priority equals highest, lowest, and we would have separate swim lanes for different priorities. I will just create swim lanes based on epics. And let's see if I have any epics. Yeah, you can see that I have developer epics, PO epic, just epic, and with information how many tasks, how many issues are from specific epic, and I can go one by one and see what is happening to them. I could use search on this board. The search functions are especially useful when you have really a lot of tasks on your board, or you want to find specific ones pretty quickly. So for example, only my issues, this will display only issues assigned to me. These filters can also be modified and changed in the board settings screen. So let's return to the backlog and see what happens over there. So over here, sprint is started. I could create the new sprint, and this is what will usually happen. So you will not wait with new sprint until you close this one. You want to start the planning of a next sprint earlier, so that when this sprint ends, next one is ready to be started, right? So we already know what should be done over there. And by the way, if you're doing the planning, you can use insights. So over here, you will see, for example, how many story points on average you completed from previous sprints. This board is a new one. I created this with you, so there are no past sprints, but you will see average over here, so you will be able to see how much you're delivering, right? So I created a new sprint. I will drag something in. So let's assume that we're getting close to the end of the sprint, or maybe before we do that, let's look over here. So I told you that from day-to-day perspective, it's better to use active sprints board or view to see what is happening to the sprint. But there are options where you can make this view a bit more useful or information dense. So let's assume that over here we would like to see some additional information, right? Because this is not sufficient for us. We can go into board settings, and over here we'll have a card layout option or screen, and you will see that it's divided into backlog. So basically what new fields we want to have in the backlog view, and active sprint, so what we want to see in active sprint. So let's add status in both of them, I would say. Sadly, the number of fields that we can add over here is limited, I believe, to 3, although don't quote me on that. So I will add status to both, get back to the board, and you will see that in the moment I will refresh the screen. Yeah, status is available over here. So we see that, yeah, basically 3 tasks are in progress. 2 are in to-do status. Okay, our sprint, or the end date of our sprint here, is getting close. I will go back into active sprints. I will move some tasks to status done. But let's assume that some of them are not yet finished, right? So 2 of them are still in progress. Yet the end date came. We need to close the sprint. There is no option, or there should be no option to expand the sprint. Whatever is done is done. Everything else gets back to the backlog. So I left the active sprints without it. So over here I can complete the sprint. Although I have 9 days remaining, let's imagine that I'm now at the moment where the sprint should be finished. So I'm completing the sprint, and you will see that I will be asked where the issues should be moved. The ones that were not completed. I could pick a sprint that I already created. I will just pick the backlog, so click complete. I will see the sprint report burn down chart, which is not the greatest for me because I'm just showing you this bit quick. I want to go through whole life cycle of a sprint with you. But what you would expect to see here is this red line is a burn down chart. So how many story points we delivered. This gray line is a linear slope showing how many story points you should have at specific moment in time of a sprint. You can see that start date of this chart is start of a sprint and end date is end date of a sprint. So how many you should have if you would burn story points evenly across the time. Obviously, you will basically never cover this line exactly. Usually it will look like that you have red line over here, then it drops below the gray line, then maybe something drops here, and perfectly at the end it should meet together. What you would not like to see is that at the end red line is not at 0 here, because that means that some of the tasks were not delivered. You can see that mine also ends somewhere above. Or you do not want to have something like red line being very, very horizontal over here just to drop right at the end, because this basically means that your team is struggling at the beginning of a sprint. They cannot deliver tasks and they are doing everything at the end, very often, spending overtime, which is not the best. But yeah, if your team doesn't raise any issues with that, and maybe this is just specific of your work that tasks are being delivered closer to the end of a sprint, that's fine. The most important thing is that at the end, we should aim to have everything delivered. Okay, I will get back. I will go to the backlog. We've seen how the sprint planning is done we've seen how we are working in active sprints, some tips and tricks with splitting and with dragging this line. Now, what are the biggest problems around features, or single one, because this is the one that we hear most often about? What is the biggest problem of the features around sprints that Jira has? And that is basically dependencies. Usually teams are working on the tasks that have some dependencies with tasks delivered by the other teams. The problem is, for this planning, is that we do not see these dependencies over here, right? So obviously when doing the planning, we can click over here, see the details of a task and check what are the dependencies or what are the links to other tasks. Usually this is how dependencies are represented, and decide whether a task can go into the sprint or not. Seems pretty easy. The problem is that over here we do not see if the task is planned in other sprint or not, because it might be planned on other board, right? So actually we would have to go over there and see if some sprint is assigned. So that's quite a bit of clicking, and it's often very problematic. Very often I've seen that someone plans a task later. It turns out that in fact this is blocked by something that other team does. So this is the biggest issue. How can we work around that? So one thing is obviously what I've told you. When you are doing planning, you can try to look at the linked issues over here. The second option I've seen used requires some preparation before sprint planning, but basically remember that we can display additional columns or additional information on these cards, like we did with status over here. We could use one of the fields to indicate that task cannot be planned because it is blocked by something else, right? So when product owner is preparing a backlog for the sprint planning, he should go through all the tasks, see all the dependencies, and say, okay, this one, we are dependent on this one, and this is not planned for any sprint yet. So I'm marking this as a blocked. In my case, I just flagged this issue, and you can see this flag over here in the place where the priority was. To flag, you basically need to click on the issue. There are three dots, over here, and you can add a flag. So basically now it means when I flagged the issue, it means that this issue is blocked. We cannot plan it for the upcoming sprint, right? Still, sadly, that requires that it is quite an overhead. So someone, usually product owner, has to go through this issue, verify all the dependent tasks, whether they will be delivered before we start the sprint or not. And yeah, sometimes it changes. So something that was planned for a sprint in the other team falls out of the sprint. Something that was okay for us to be put into the sprint suddenly gets blocked. It's absolutely terrible. Sadly, there is not a lot of other things we can do within pure Jira that would allow us to address this issue. Fortunately, there are apps that are working on top of Jira. So I will show you how to handle this issue, or how one of the apps called BigPicture addresses this issue. So let's open BigPicture. BigPicture is a project and portfolio management tool. We have a lot of stuff about BigPicture on our channel, so if you will be interested, check this one out. For now, I will show you only one thing, and very briefly. So you can see over here that I have so-called box that overlaps my Jira project. I will go into one of the modules called board, which is used for agile planning. And over here, you can see that I have iterations. These iterations, so I have iteration 1 and 2, this iteration might be synced with my Jira sprint. So basically everything I put into sprint in Jira will be visible over here in iteration. For example, sprint 1 will be iteration 1 and sprint 2 will be iteration 2. Now, we can do the planning, so what we want to do in iteration. So for example, this iteration will set that this is in progress. This is sprint that is being delivered currently. And this one is to do so. We are planning this iteration, right? Now, the main difference between this board and the Jira Scrum board is that over here we can see work of multiple teams. So you can see over here that I have backend team, I have digital transformation team. So I can do planning for multiple teams on the same board. So this is first thing that I think BigPicture handles better. So we can, from the backlog over here is available on the right, I can start doing the planning and say this task will be done by digital transformation team, this task will be done by backend. But that's just part of the strength of BigPicture. Another thing is that BigPicture displays dependencies. So I have expanded dependencies, and I can say that, for example, this task that is being delivered by the digital transformation team has to be done before this task delivered by backend team. You can see that arrow appear over here, and it is yellow. Yellow means that, okay, in theory, you will be able to do that. If you deliver this one in sprint, this one we could also work on. But it is risky, because if team digital transformation will deliver this task too late in the sprint, we won't finish this one. This is why it's yellow. If we will create dependency over here, so it is dependency between the teams, but also between sprints, right? So this should already be delivered when this task will be started. It's planned in another sprint. That's why the arrow over here is yellow. On the other hand, if we would create a dependency like that, for example, where task that should be done first is planned for the later sprint, you will see that this arrow is red, informing us that we did something wrong over here. And thanks to the fact that this can be fully synchronized with sprints, everything that you do over here will be reflected on the team board, on the standard Jira Scrum board that, basically I put something in iteration 2, it will appear over there in sprint that represents this iteration 2. So teams can do their planning on the Jira boards, on the Jira Scrum boards. And here you can use this screen only to have an overview whether dependencies are okay or not. On the other hand, teams could also do the planning over here, and everything would be reflected on the Jira board in their sprint, so day-to-day work could still be handled within standard Jira boards in active sprints section. So as you have seen, working in Jira for isolated agile team is pretty straightforward. And although it can take you some time to configure Jira so that it matches your needs fully, kickstarting the project, kickstarting the work is very simple. But when it comes to multiple teams that are interconnected and that have dependencies between each other, it is a bit more tricky. It might require some specific Jira configuration or some additional apps working on top of Jira. So if you would like to have professional support around Jira configuration or picking up apps for planning or project management, feel free to reach out to us. We are one of the most experienced companies in that area. Okay, that will be all for this video. Thanks for this one. I hope that you enjoyed it. It was useful, and hear you in the next one.